So here I will be presenting very similar questions as I did to the earlier panelist here, and here is the great Grandmaster himself. Besides being the celebrated chess grandmaster that he is, that all of us in India know for the last few generations, in fact, he is also a keen political commentator. He was quite actively involved in politics in Russia, and at one point of time was even looking at running for office. And as a player, as a chess player, as a keen chess player, a student of strategy, I think we probably would be able to understand Putin's mind from this man's perspective. Getting straight into the questions, sir. What was Putin's real motive? Are we to believe that it's a naive personal vendetta mission to regain past glory of the Soviet Empire, or are there other motives?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. And since I heard so many words about Russian roulette and about chess, I think before I answer this question and other questions, I think we have to set up the rules of the game. Because I always feel uncomfortable when people compare Putin to a chess player. Because the game of chess is something that dictators don't like. In chess, we have 100% available information. I have my pieces, you have your pieces, and we play by the rules. Let me emphasize, by the rules. I make a move, you make a move. And when, I left my professional chess in 2005, 17 years ago, and moved in what people mistakenly called Russian politics. For me, it was more like a fight to restore democracy in Russia. And I was asked repeatedly whether chess experience can help me in Russia, in its muddy waters of Russian political life. And my answer was absolutely not, because in chess we have fixed rules and unpredictable results. In Russia it was the opposite. The rules change all the time, but results stay the same. So that's what I learned about Putin and his view of the game. So that's why when we talk about Putin and his strategy, I like roulette, by the way, but it's more likely poker. Because in poker you can win with a very weak hand. But you can just raise the stakes, you can bluff. And I have to give Putin, though I've been fiercest critic of Putin from his first day in the office, a credit for being a great poker player. Geopolitical poker, raising stakes and using bluff to test their opponents. And unfortunately, in many cases, the free world, the leaders of the free world, folded cards, even having a much better hand. So, if we want to talk about Putin's intentions, as a professional chess player and as someone who used to analyze facts and being always suspicious about rumors, I want to look at what Putin said himself. So his own words. Because, from history we know that while dictators lie about everything they have done, very often they tell us exactly what they're going to do. And, going back to the days where Putin was rising, he was still the prime minister and everybody knew who the Yeltsin's successor. He met his former colleagues from KGB in their headquarters in Lubyanka. And he made a very important statement, definitely for my Soviet era. No former KGB agents. Once KGB, always KGB. When I heard it, I knew that our feeble democracy was in great trouble. Then later, as a president of Russia, he immediately restored Soviet national anthem, which, by the way, was a symbol. Yes, they say it's a symbolic. Absolutely. In countries like Russia, symbols are very important. That was, again, demonstration what he could do if given the chance. And he repeatedly said the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century. Hearing that, I knew that all Russia's newly independent states were at risk. And in 2007, I think he was even more specific. At Munich Security Conference in February 2007, he talked about a return to spheres of influence. And I can remind the audience, that's the language directly from Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the language that Hitler and Stalin used to divide Europe. So, many people in the free world, including leaders of the free world, believed it was just, a bravado. It's just, statements for domestic consumption. By the way, the same they thought about Hitler. And next year, 2008, Putin attacked the Republic of Georgia. Yeah, technically it was Medvedev. I'm not sure many people remember the name of Putin's puppet who was sitting there for 4 years, but it was an attack on the sovereign state, and the free world hasn't responded. And Putin recognized that he could move even further. That's exactly the algorithm every dictator used in the past. Not asking why, but why not? And just checking, what is the room for maneuver? What are availabilities to expand his global influence? And the turning point, of course, was Crimea. It was annexation. In 2008, Putin was not yet ready to annex Republic of Georgia territories. They declared these quasi-independent states like South Ossetia or Abkhazia. But in 2014, he made another step, annexation. And annexation is something that is very, I would call, unusual in the world. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I know all about two annexations after World War II. It's a China-Tibet annexation. Yeah, there again, it's a little bit, it's strange. And Saddam Hussein Kuwait. And the world immediately responded to that. Even Turkish occupied northern Cyprus is not annexed. So it's a quasi-independent state, but under Turkish control. But still, everybody was shy of annexation. Annexation of Crimea was a clear signal that Putin would do whatever he believed was possible to spread his influence. And the fact is that the Americans walked away from the Middle East, basically leaving it for Putin. Barack Obama reneged on his infamous red line and led Assad to use chemical weapons and stay in power. Putin immediately jumped in. So that's exactly what has been happening over the last almost 2 decades. Every time Americans and the leaders of the free world moved away from some territories, somebody jumped in. And we know who jumps in. China, Iran, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and of course Putin. So as of Ukraine, again, I want us to look at what Putin has been saying after Crimea. Because, by the way, for those who do not know, and I apologize for this long, historical lecture, because it's important to know the context. From 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the appearance on the map of many independent states, Russia made let me emphasize, not a single demand to Ukraine about territories. No, there was no issue. Even more important, in 1994, and I don't know how much your audience is aware of that, there was an agreement signed in Budapest, so-called Budapest Memorandum. Under pressure from Americans and Brits, Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal. Do you know the size of its nuclear arsenal? It was bigger than China, Great Britain, and France combined. Nearly 2,000 warheads. They had to give it back to Russia because Americans wanted to deal only with one country as the owner of nukes. And then small portions of Kazakhstan and Belarus followed. So everything was in Russia's hands. In exchange, Ukraine received guarantees from Russia, America, and Britain about territorial integrity. So there was no issue. In 2014, 20 years later, Putin simply ignored it, moved in, reaction, zero, no reaction. Some small sanctions, Putin didn't care about it. And I think, that's emboldened to him because from 2014 to these days, he has been consistently saying that Ukraine must be destroyed. That's, again, not me, it's him and his propaganda. He denied Ukrainian statehood. He made it very clear that Ukraine, didn't belong to the map and Russia, had rights to expand its influence, to cut Ukraine from the sea. So basically occupying 10 Ukrainian districts. And as of today, I just read the latest news. Now they declared new goals, not to only take the east, but also the south of Ukraine, because they failed to take Kyiv. But basically, it's this: Putin never never left us any doubts about his goals in Ukraine, and his propaganda machine actually is pushing further. They're talking now about extermination of Ukrainians. We are not seeing just genocide committed by few, Russian troops. This is a state-supported genocide because every day they keep repeating that Ukraine must be denazified, which just sounds odd because Ukrainian president is a Jew. And Russia has rights to take over Ukraine and basically remove Ukraine from the map.
So that's the Russia-Ukraine story. But Ukraine is not a NATO member, and Russia knows that just as it's not going to be attacked because it's a nuclear power, NATO also is a nuclear-backed power, and therefore we don't have. I mean, at least the Europeans do not see a direct danger of a Russian attack touching Romania or Poland. Why is NATO intervening by supporting in this low-intensity manner instead of letting Ukraine go into neutrality, which was the technical argument that Putin wanted? So wouldn't it be safer to allow Ukraine to go into neutrality, since it's not a NATO member, and Russia to go back? Is that an option?
I doubt it was an option 8 years ago. Now, of course, it's not. After tens of thousands of civilians murdered, and we are, by the way, watching war crimes on an industrial scale online, practically online. I don't think that the war will end up with quote-unquote tie. There will be no draws, no compromises. Either Putin wins or we win. And I say we win. And that's exactly the position of many Europeans. After years and years of appeasement and doing business with Putin, they recognize it's not Russia-Ukraine. Yes, you repeated the same, notion, Russia-Ukraine. No, the global security infrastructure, cannot exist at a time where the mighty country attacks the smaller neighbor and grabs territory and annexes it and decides, okay, now I want to redo the map. That brings us back to the 20th century, the first half of the 20th century, or even to early days. And by the way, Putin always, demonstrated his admiration not only for Joseph Stalin, but also Ivan the Terrible. That's, the world that nobody will like, because we all hope to prosper and thrive in the world where we respect the law, the treaties, the memorandums, the compromises. And Putin demonstrates that no, violence is not only allowed, but is desirable. If I have might, I could do whatever I find, appropriate for my geopolitical agenda. So Europeans recognize that the war cannot be limited to Ukraine, because Ukraine is a big country. I mean, let's not forget, the biggest European country of 44 million people, though we have probably about 10 million refugees now. And this country could resist. Poland is also a big country, but Lithuania and Baltic countries, they are relatively small. And everybody understands now, if not for NATO, because these countries have been adopted or admitted to NATO in the beginning of the century, Russian tanks now would be parading in the streets of Vilnius, Tallinn, and Riga. So, and it's not surprising that we see now that the Finland and Sweden now is planning to join NATO, ending their decades-long policy of neutrality. So this is not a war for Ukrainian territorial integrity only. This is not a war only for Europe. This is a war that will have consequences elsewhere, because if Putin, God forbid, succeeds, then what will prevent China attacking Taiwan? So this is a test whether international community has guts, has resources to prevent a naked aggression to succeed. And again, with Europe, that was so much in bed with Putin. Look at Germany, for instance. This is the gas business, and Angela Merkel government did absolutely everything to prevent other alternative routes of gas supply to Europe. So they relied heavily on Russia, and now they realized, that was a big mistake, and that's why reluctantly they are now supplying Ukraine with weapons, because they know that the conflict is too close to NATO borders, and even by mistake, one of the Russian missiles can hit a NATO territory. And what next? Lviv is about 40 miles from the Polish border. And Russians that are hitting the entire Ukrainian territory, saying, okay, they are military infrastructure objects, though we know it's now a war to bomb Ukrainians into submission.
But Garry,
since they failed with initial thrust to take Kyiv in 3 days, as they planned, they shifted to what Putin knew the best. Attacks on civilians, and the demolition of Ukraine is something that I last time saw in the World War II movies.
But so is propping up a Ukrainian defense instead of allowing it to submit with lesser bloodshed, which could be a possibility, and then the economic siege that NATO countries and US are putting on, that's one strategy. The other could be an all-out NATO involvement and an offensive. Would you recommend an offensive on Russia to sort of subdue the dictatorship?
Look, again, let us agree that we are not in the position to advise Ukrainians what to do. It's their country, and they're fighting like hell.
I'm not talking of Ukrainian.
No, they're fighting like hell, and I think we should all offer them not only our admiration but our help, because they are on the side of democracy versus tyranny, and this is the front line. So it seems that they're doing a great job, by the way. So if in the beginning of the war, everybody, and I say everybody, American intelligence, Europeans, politicians, they all thought Ukraine would fall in 3-4 days, and that was Putin's plans. It failed. And then people say, oh, maybe Ukraine can survive a bit longer and to move the war into insurgency stage. And that's why they talked about Afghanistan and Vietnam, not understanding that Ukraine is very different. No mountains like in Afghanistan, no jungles like in Vietnam. And Ukraine army is now bigger than the Russian army. It's a big country and it's much more experienced. So Russia lost, most of its best troops in the first days of war. And now when you look at the balance, Ukraine actually can win. So, and in NATO, again, I was highly critical of NATO unwillingness to offer Ukrainians protections, like no-fly zone. I understood the reservations. We can talk about it forever, because for me, just watching the sufferings and actually the killings of so many civilians that were defenseless against Russians' attacks from high skies. So that was it's too painful. But okay, we are now here. It's almost 2 weeks, 2 months of the war, and NATO is now shifted to the its full gear, supplying Ukraine with heavy weapons. The goal has to be declared, and they're still falling short of that. Ukraine must win, and it's doable. Russian troops are depleted. Their offense in the east is not going as well, and if Ukraine receives enough weapons and it combined with sanctions, and sanctions are having huge effect on Russia. Your previous speaker talked about oil and gas industry, but it has effect everywhere, because Russian economy has been built, as a part of the global economy. Unlike Soviet Union, it couldn't actually rely on domestic production. So many things, like aviation or practically everything depend on the spare parts. We don't know how long, but I would say 2-3 months, just hearing to what Russian officials are saying, reading between the lines. So Russia may be facing shortage of practically everything. And of course money. Putin relied on his hundreds of billions of dollars that were placed everywhere in the world. A lot of this money now is frozen. And, he may be soon facing a dramatic shortage of cash to pay for his propaganda, police, and army. War is an expensive business. We understand that. And it's not surprising that Russia is bringing very old technology now to the front line. They're bringing troops from everywhere. I mean, the fact is that Putin brought troops from Far East. It's amazing. Russian borders now are basically, naked. So he brought troops from Tajikistan, it's an Afghan border, from Armenian base, from Republic of Georgia, some occupied territories where he had his bases. So according to the rough estimation of intelligence, so up to 80% of Russian military power now is either in Ukraine or surrounding Ukraine. And they're still not winning the war. And I think Ukraine can win. And that's far more important than simply restoring Ukraine territorial integrity. It's about sending the message to everybody, China included, that the naked aggression might have dramatic consequences. A, the world will support the victim of aggression, and B, sanctions might be very painful. And that's why I believe that's the reason why China is so cautious now. Putin expected China to be, in supporting him, it's all the way down the road. China is sitting on the fence. And not only China, all China's clients like Kazakhstan, they also try to be friendly to Ukraine. They don't, of course, they don't call it genocide, but they offer no assistance to Russia. And that's, by the way, important. Russia is isolated now, and I think that's a lesson for every future aggressor to learn.
So, if they, see some sense and walk back, giving some excuse that they have had victory on May 9th, then things might calm down and, Europe and the world would breathe that, okay, Ukraine was able to resist. But if that does not happen, and this goes a little more than that, and Ukraine indeed, really pummels them down, and by the time the sanctions take impact, in 2 months' time, couldn't we see a desperate Russia, like a cat in the corner, start getting even more aggressive and start hitting in a last-ditch attempt, and therefore get more dangerous? That is possible.
By the way, again, this is, let's not us deal with wishful thinking.
Okay.
As I said, this morning I read, that the Russia confirmed its intention to take over the south of Ukraine. That's exactly was Putin's plan in 2014. They even published the maps of the so-called Novorossiya, New Russia, stretching from Luhansk, I think many people know the map now, all the way down south to Odessa. Basically cutting Ukraine from Azov Sea and the Black Sea. So that was the plan, and they reinstated this plan after Putin met Russian Minister of Defense, and today it was published. So I don't think that they will ever stop. But the question is, do they have resources for that? I doubt very much. And big statements, that Putin is making, they are not meeting the reality on the ground. And I think many of his generals know that. And answering your question about desperation. So when we say desperate, we're talking about WMDs. And are we talking about WMDs chemical or tactical nuclear or ballistic missiles? So that's that's all different things. Now, I think it's most realistic is talking about tactical nuclear. That's something that can be used to destroy some of the military objects, because the strategic effect of tactical nuclear is not huge. So yeah, it's more like sending a message. So it's and demonstrating that he's ready to move to the next stage. But now the question is, who is going to push the button? Let's say Putin decides out of desperation to move at the next stage. Now we're talking about his generals and admirals that might be thinking, okay, fine. If I push the button, what comes next? And it seems now that NATO is reaching a point, definitely the Brits already made the statement, Boris Johnson said it, that there will be adequate response. From what I know about the morale in the Russian army now, and again, I don't pretend to be, having a special knowledge. I left my country more than 9 years ago, but, I'm still connected. I doubt very much that there will be enough will to die, because that means dying. The moment you push the button, and most likely NATO or Ukrainian missile will hit you back. So, after the Ukrainians sank the Russian flagship, so that's demonstration that things, can go really ugly. I think that Putin may find it difficult to, rally kamikaze from his army. Whether, single pilots that would like to go to the skies to meet NATO planes, or admirals and generals that will authorize the strike. Again, can I bet my bottom dollar on that? No. But as I said, it's not chess. It's more like poker. It's Russian roulette. So we are dealing with unknowns here. But again, this is what are the chances of us to avoid it? I think this is strengthening the Ukrainian army reduces the risk, because we should not think what Putin likes or dislike. I think basically forget him. Say he's a mad dictator who can do whatever. It's about people on the ground. Who will have to carry his orders. And if they see that they're losing, I think they will be very reluctant to sacrifice their lives for the sick imagination of a mad dictator.
Okay, and there'll be two more questions. One about China. On the economic sanctions and all-out pressure from the West driving Russia towards China in the long run, if Russia does indeed survive, is that a good outcome for the US? Wouldn't a Russia engaged in trade with Europe be a better long-term option than a damaged and disengaged but militarily powerful Russia becoming a satellite of the new second pole of the global order? The China relationship.
Thank you very much. I understand it's an important question for Indians, but trust me, it was an important question for Russian opposition. Because Putin has been selling Russian national interest to China for 2 decades. It's not happening now. He has been giving China, Russian oil and gas and timber and resources of Far East and East Siberia and even West Siberia at a very low price. So that's why now shifting his contracts from Europe to China is not possible, because China already bought it in advance at a very low price. So he will never compensate. And there's no infrastructure there. So the Chinese problem is huge. I can tell you, in 2006, I've been traveling, in Russian Far East and East Siberia, traveling from Irkutsk to Vladivostok, actually other way around, from Vladivostok to Irkutsk. And in Irkutsk, near Lake Baikal, I had a very sad anecdote, a local joke. They told me about Chinese, expansion, saying Chinese are crossing our borders in small groups, 100,000 each. So that could give you an idea. 2006. So China's threat to Russia, to my country, is real. And by the way, China is the only country, it's not NATO, that has territorial claims. You look at the Chinese maps, half of Russia is temporary occupied territory. So China is a problem for Russia. And that's why, if we're talking about the future geopolitical combination, so Russia with Putin will be China's vassal state. I couldn't agree more. Russia without Putin is an ally of Europe, of the United States, and eventually a real ally of India, because we all understand that the imperialist China is the biggest threat for democracy and stability in the 21st century. And with the Chinese economic miracle is now going, of losing its steam, China will eventually move into these geopolitical adventures. Attacking Taiwan is an option. We understand that. And China now is experiencing so many problems with COVID. And it's also a demonstration that they failed to come up with a vaccine, proper vaccine. That tells you everything about their ability to compete with the free world. So that could make Xi Jinping and his cronies desperate for actions. And that's why sooner we have change in Russia, better our chance to build a strong coalition to tame Chinese dragon.
Yeah. So that brings me to the last question about India. India has been reserved in its opinions and statements. It obviously has very high reliance on supplies and spares for its military from Russia. Russia has been an old and useful ally. India's interests in this subject, how do you look at this, the Indian response?
Look, I hope you understand that Putin cannot be a reliable ally to anybody. Putin doesn't care. I always call him a merchant of doubt. He's very good in spreading chaos and doubts, and it's all about him surviving. It's a mafia state. And Putin is a capo di tutti capi, boss of bosses. So he will sell any strategic partner if he sees an immediate benefit for him. So that's why, he doesn't care. So he deals with Iranians, he deals with Israelis, he deals with China, he deals with India. But you should remember that, that Putin, may look at your region, your part of the world, as another opportunity to put it ablaze. So there's so many problems there. So you have Pakistan, you have, all sorts of problems in the region I don't have to tell you about. And that's, something that for Putin's criminal mind could be another opportunity. He's too busy now in Ukraine. And let's keep him busy, and hopefully we can ruin his regime. So I think again, it's India's long-term strategy should be to be on the side of the free world, because again, Russia is immediate problem. Let's go back to chess now. It's a tactical problem. China is a strategic challenge. And I think, you should look for the coalition that will, oppose Chinese threat. It's a much bigger threat. If Russian army can be destroyed in Ukrainian steppes and valleys, and Putin regime may collapse, by the way, I think it will not survive, for the next 2 years. That's, take it as my prediction. So we'll see big changes in Russia. But China is going to be there. And I think it's time to start thinking strategically. I heard so many good comments today here, and I think it's important for us to start building this strategy. And India, I believe, can play a major role, because it's one of the arguments of Chinese Communist Party, is that, countries as big as China cannot be democratic. The answer to this false assumption is India. So I think India could actually play a role as the biggest democracy in the world, and of course economic powerhouse, and it could become a leader of this coalition that will start, changing things in Asia for positive, not to going from the region with so many landmines, geopolitical landmines, into something for more, friendly for our habitat.
Actually, I missed two questions on the next page. In fact, one was what I spoke to you in the morning about the impact of flow on the gas pipes. Were you able to sort of get some inputs on that? The Siberian pipelines, cracking and how that could impact. I mean, what do you think that could be a more imminent threat and therefore push them to military action right away? Or do you think that's something that is not something that we need to worry about?
As I told you, so I wasn't an expert. So I called my friend Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the former head of Yukos. This is the largest Russian company that has been confiscated by Putin, and the man spent 10 years in jail. Now he lives in the West. I asked his qualified opinion, and he said he's more aware about oil, not gas, because that was his product. But he thinks that this threat is real only in winter. So as of now, he said it's not that relevant. For the next few months, we should not count on this. But in winter, he said, if you start, dumping the production, you could have problems, definitely with oil. So that's why, again, this is the long-term future may not be bright for Russian oil and gas industry. But for the next 3-4 months, maybe even 6 months. So that's 6 months probably already called. 3-4 months. That's not likely a vital threat.
Okay. And one point about as a chess master, do you think you can sort of visualize and predict what would be the next steps in Europe from the Russian side?
Look, again, I can deal with information that we receive, what I know about history and about current affairs, and I try to apply my historical experience, personal experience to the current affairs, analyzing them, is that Putin cannot afford to look like a loser, because he knows. I'm not sure he read many books, but he has a good animal instinct. Any dictator who stays in power for 20 plus years has a great instinct of survival. And he knows that dictator who looks weak is dead, both politically and physically. So it's the moment he shows weakness, his own cronies will be looking for a scapegoat. And typically it's a dictator himself. So that's why he will use every resource he has to win the war. Again, the question is how far he can go and how far others can go. And I think they'll still try in the next 10 days to push through. But from what I'm seeing now, it's highly unlikely they will have a major military success in eastern Ukraine. They could have some tactical successes, but the idea to encircle Ukrainian troops in the east, it's unlikely. And obviously, every day Ukraine is getting stronger, because now they're receiving heavy armor, long-range artillery, anti-ship missiles. So the balance of war is changing every day against Russia. And I want to remind the audience, the Ukrainian army is now bigger than Russian army in size. So this is they keep bringing fresh, reinforcements from the West. It's a country, big country with full mobilization now. And many of their troops are really experienced because they had 8 years fighting experience in Donbass. So I would wait for another couple of weeks to see the outcome, and then by May 9th, this is, you mentioned, sacred date. By the way, people always ask me why May 9th. Yeah. It's because Stalin didn't want to celebrate the V-Day the same day as the free world, because Germany capitulated on May 8th, but Stalin wanted his separate celebration. That's why he forced Germans to do a second capitulation on May 9th. So just to be different. That's a little known historical fact. So that's why Russia celebrates V-Day, at one day later. And I think that's if nothing happens by that time, so we'll see what's next. But I saw Putin's conversation with his Minister of Defense, Shoigu. Let me tell you, they both looked bad. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I cannot make a diagnosis, but they looked bad. And it seems that Shoigu really had a heart attack, because he looked very feeble. But Putin, with his hands, holding the table, again, it doesn't inspire confidence. And it's not about me watching. It's about Russian generals, Russian officers, Russian soldiers, Russian families watching him. He doesn't look strong anymore. So this is and if dictator doesn't radiate strength, That's really bad news. So that's why I think that the war may end up very poorly for Russia. And by the way, though I'm Russian, I still think it's the best outcome for us, because I think the liberation of Russia from Putin's regime will become with liberation of Ukraine from Putin's troops.
Thanks a lot, Garry. I think that's been really, really illuminating. A very, very good perspective of the whole, situation in an extremely intimate manner. Thank you very much, Garry, for spending time with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. So always happy to share my ideas. Thank you.